War.
War.
What is it good for?
Not much, really.
Not much, really. It just occurred to me that there, like, in the currently there's like this conflict in Syria, I guess. There are conflicts everywhere, but it came to mind at least.
Yeah.
And there was in the papers something about like the use of like chemical warfare,
Mm.
and this that someone claimed that there'd been used chemicals killing civilians, and this could not stand, so we intervened and we bombed. I say we now, like the West, I guess, but I guess it was US and French and British bombed some chemical factories and storage locations in Syria to sort of make things better.
Mm.
That was like what I was thinking about when the subject of today's episode came to mind.
Yeah.
And so I just found it, I don't know, kind of, I guess, like my initial reaction was this sadness, because we don't really know what's going on, and the truth is sort of like somewhere out of reach. So we're just hearing all this information about this guy's doing that and he's horrible, so we need to do this to stop him from doing these horrible things, even though, do we really know what's going on in the first place?
Yeah.
And it just, the notion that war, or like using bombs or weapons to solve a complicated problem just seemed so counterintuitive for one thing, and it just seems so very obvious that this will only make things worse.
Why is it obvious?
I don't know. I guess it's from the perspective of how these things have worked in the past, I guess.
Yeah.
Or it's just, I guess it's like the default notion that violence will sort of stop violence. It just doesn't seem to be working on any level. I guess that's what sort of got to me, is once again we're sort of just trying to solve conflict with more conflict.
Yeah. Expecting it to change something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this will make things somehow better.
But it is. I think that what is interesting with war is that it is kind of the most obvious way to analyze and describe how our minds work in this dualistic thinking, in the sense that if there is a problem, if we can just build a wall big enough to keep the problem outside of our own, bubble, or if we can eliminate the problem by force, by killing it, by scaring it or whatever, then we kind of make sure that our safe spot is kind of safe, and in that thinking we think that we create a better world because we kind of keep out all the bad stuff, or even kill it, so we kind of save the day. And that mindset is so kind of built in most of the patterns that we go through. Like also, when you watch say you watch a movie where you have this hero that's saving the world, like who's saving the day. So often it is about doing what is right, in sense of using your own force to keep away all the darkness or the bad stuff. So
Yeah.
even in our heroes, the people we look up to in stories and everything, we kind of still kind of believe in the same idea that actually is the building blocks of war. So if you take it all the way, it's actually like most of the things we believe in is not actually peace; it's war. But
yeah, I think
but
you're totally
physical,
right.
but
It's
physical war, like throwing bombs or shooting people, that makes it really on the edge. But it's the same mindset that goes all the way. It just becomes more obvious when it comes to war.
yeah, I guess it's more like explicitly
Yeah,
out there, and it's not so understated as. And I think you're really onto something. It's sort of like a fundamental building block in our
Yeah.
society, is that we need to fix things, and we need to keep the bad stuff away.
Yeah.
We need to do good, but but good also means doing bad things to bad people to keep them from doing bad things, or
yeah,
so there's like this logic just keeps on keeps us going for like infinitely, I guess, just in this spiral of trying to solve an unsolvable problem.
yeah. But also in like small things like if you have a neighbor that do something that you don't like, oh, he parked on my spot, or his car is or his garden bushes are too close to me, or I don't, maybe that's not a good example, but if some kind of unjust happens to you, that can if you look at from outside, it can just look like an accident or something like totally unimportant. But the moment that something, quote, unjust happens to you, how easy is it to blame your neighbor? Like, oh, it's he doesn't care. He's doing this. He is doing that. He take advantage of me or whatever. Like we're so quick to go in that. Actually, the war mindset that it's that person's wrong that this happened to me. It's the same kind of mechanism, just a little bit closer to home.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because like bad things happen, right? So bad, like,
yeah. You
or
can.
horrible things
it's
will
like-
happen.
It's a
It's-
label you can use. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's applicable, right? So it's a word like you break your foot, that's gonna hurt, right? So let's just call it bad. It's gonna be a learning experience, but you can also call it good. But for all intensive purposes, in this instance, let's call it like bad.
Yeah.
So you break your foot, and it was an accident, but it also seems very natural to find out what went wrong, who's to blame, and in some instances you blame yourself, right? So you start a war with yourself, like, how could I have done something differently? I should have looked both ways before crossing that the road or whatever. But also you can start turning that outwards and be like, well, the driver should have seen me. It was like crossing there, so I was in my right of way, and it was his fault, and car drivers are evil, and you sort of make this narrative to yourself where you justify all this hatred, and also like, well, he needs to be punished. So I guess it's very like baked into our as you say, our dualistic mindset.
And the more we do it, the more we kind of, because the world will always look like you trying it to look like when if you constantly, because you're not aware, you reinforce the same mindset over and over again in your own experience. That is also the experience you're gonna have every day. Like the more you are are thinking that the world is your enemy. The world is out to get you. Bad things happens. You need to be careful, or blame on other people. The more that kind of experience is exactly what you're gonna get.
It's got a law of attraction.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it sort of makes sense, right?
You
Because
attract
when everything
to
is
what
like a
you think
battle,
about.
it's just going to be a war. You're
Yeah.
like life will turn into sort of like this war where you sort of want to win it, I guess.
Mm.
I don't know how you could, but I guess
Yeah,
from
because
some
that's-
perspective it just
In my experience, when I starting working on myself, looking inwards, starting to figure out what is this about, this experience, it becomes easier and easier to realize. Not always, because I still do a lot of I have my everyday battles, but what happens more often now than before is that I realize that when I go into the mindset of overcoming something, winning, or getting to a certain goal, that it's important that this needs to happen now, or I should have this because he so and so and so. The more I walk on my path of starting to realize what is going on, it is often easier and easier to see that, oh, I realize when I get to that space, that when I get to that point where I look as an ideal, like, oh, if I just win over that enemy, or if I get this thing, or if I whatever it is, it gets easier and easier to realize that when I get to that point, everything is going to be exactly the same. I'm not going to be another person. I'm not going to have something more in my life. It's just like I got lost in the battle of making something so important that I lost, connection with what was really the point.
you lost your path.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess like on a global perspective, the whole concept of war just puts it all into sort of a greater perspective, because we've all lost our path, sort of. And I guess that's what I find most like gets to me is the fact that we're also invested in this idea that this is how the world works, and this is like the best way. That we're actually just just bombing random things around the globe under the pretense of saying, well, this will make the world a better place. Even though I cannot understand that anyone, like honestly, like really deep in their bones, feel that's like a solution to any problem, because it doesn't harmonate with like your soul, your essence. It's just like reaffirming some old ego belief that someone else is wrong and you need to be right and you need to win this, and then you're the victor, and everyone else are the losers and you were right and they were wrong, and boom, you won the game.
Yeah. And then what?
And then what?
But yeah, I think at least most people in our, like in Norway, and I think the same like most countries now, that for most people, if you ask them, it doesn't make sense to bomb another nation or something. It's just unbelievable that it can happen, but still we do it. So what is actually going on? Because if you ask someone on the street, there's like, we don't want this, but still these powerful nations are kind of playing a totally different game with each other. That kind of looks separate from from the everyday life of ordinary people. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I guess the word game
Yeah.
is a good description of it as well, because it is sort of like a game. But it's actually very much so a game.
Mm.
And I guess that's why we're so caught up in the winning bit of it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't play a game without trying to win it. Why would you play a game just to play?
Mm.
Which I guess reflects well on how we live our lives, right?
Mm.
Because we want to win this game. We don't just want to play it and see what happens. We want to get to the end. We want to get the prize. We
Yeah.
want to
Yeah. And I
own
think
it.
that's the interesting way out of that, because it becomes more obvious to you on the path that you're actually caught in a game of winning something. Every time you see yourself struggling, you can realize that I'm caught in a game that where this is one good solution and there's one bad solution. Or you can say there's one right and there's one wrong. And so if you can find yourself in that game and realize that, okay, you're just ping-ponging between these two kind of ideas, that every decision you are doing right now to make this important is about justifying that one of these sides are better. So you need to make sure that is the outcome, the better side. And often also when you find yourself stuck, it looks something like this, that you have an idea that, I need to make this happen, because I need to make A happen because I'm so tired of B. B really sucks. I need to make sure A happens now. Unless A happens, I'm not going to be happy. And I fucking hate B happening over and over again. I feel stuck and I don't want to be there. And then you fight to make A happen, but it doesn't happen. And you get frustrated and you get tired and you get unhappy. And then you kind of give up a little bit and you go back to B, and then you start justifying that, maybe B is what I need just to accept, or maybe B is not that bad, maybe so and so, and then you kind of get a new relationship with B, and then you get tired again because it really should look like A, because A is better, A is so much better, and then you start fighting again. And then you kind of go in this loop where you're going to fight for one side and then for the other side and then for one side and then for the other side. And that's how you can be trapped for a whole lifetime without even realizing it, because you're just ping-ponging between two sides of a coin, and you never really grow, because the only thing you do is that you kind of crash into the sides in A and B, and then because real growth is when you realize that, this does actually not work. I'm not getting anywhere. It doesn't help me to overcome this enemy or to fight this cause and win it. It doesn't really change anything. And then you can kind of come to that middle ground where you accept everything as it is, and you make a decision to choose a higher understanding, a higher way. Because you can't, as long as you're attached to those the fight, you cannot really overcome it. So even if you win a cause by fighting, you will still be the same person with the same psychology afterwards. So you need to find a new cause to fight for. So you always live in the fighting mindset of overcoming something, having something that is better than other people, or better than this. You always be stuck in the mindset of fighting.
The fighter mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also has a name, that this mindset that is called the epic mindset. That always you live in the idea that something is so important, of like epic importance, that this needs to happen or else. And that means when we live, and most
Yeah.
of us live, we live in this more or less, all of us to some extent. Some people, some more and some less. But the path is to kind of, what do you call it? To get yourself out of that gradually, step by step.
Transcend would be
Yeah.
like a
Yeah,
nice word for that. Yeah.
yeah,
I guess you get sort of stuck, right? In duality, at war, a war which you cannot win because there is
Yeah.
no right or wrong. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of acceptance, and I guess in a sense it feels like the reason why going to war or conflict seems so easy, seems like such a good solution, is because we're at war with ourselves, like constantly, and saying that there would be like a third option
yeah,
just seems so frightening to us, because what there is something else than caving in or fighting, and like third way, looking at the third way. I don't remember who talked about this, but I think, for instance, the great Rob Bell used like Jesus as an example, where Jesus is sort of like the third way guy,
yeah,
because he doesn't fight, he doesn't give up, but he's challenging reality to sort of take it to a higher level,
yeah,
which I think is like really interesting.
yeah.
Um,
It is.
I think they used the example of the phrase "turning the other cheek," where we would typically think that that's a way of submission, but the whole point of the idea is that 2,000 years ago, for a slave to turn the other cheek would force the slave owner to hit him with the other hand, and you would never hit, so you would hit the slave with your right hand, like at the front of the hand, but if he turns the cheek, you would have to hit him with your left hand, and you would only use your left hand with people you think are equal to you, or it's the other way around. I don't remember, but you get the point that it's not a matter of caving in, it's a matter of actually saying I'm equal to you, and that was sort of like the point of the story, which I think turns the whole thing into something way more interesting than just a matter of like saying, well, either you can fight or you can lose.
Yeah, exactly.
And the loser, like for instance, which I think is so interesting, like in terms of war, is that here in Europe we have this truth that we all sort of keep alive, that the war, like the Second World War, was something that someone won. So the Allies won, and the Germans and the Italians, well, the Nazis, they lost. And I think it's part of like the same idea that we need this good bad logic, because that's so much easier for us to live with than gray matter. Just like within ourselves, we want like good or bad. So like bad things we want to suppress, good things we want more of, and it baffles me that we can sort of go around thinking that someone won a war.
Yeah.
Nobody wins wars. Every war is I think I read somewhere, which I thought was like really like a good like a perspective of war, of conflict, was, so you're in a relationship, right? And then you have a fight with your girlfriend, and you win the argument. So have you really actually won anything, or is it more like the relationship has lost?
Yeah.
Because a relationship is not about winning. It's about finding that, like, the harmonic place of acceptance of each other, and it's not like, okay, so you won that battle, so we're going to Spain this summer, and I lost that battle, so we're getting a new
but
car.
I think
And
also
it's like,
the kind of frightening thing is that there's a lot of people living that way.
there's a very high amount of people, and I guess I have to confess that in some ways when you're like unconscious, I guess that seems sensible to say, because consciousness is sort of what we are, right? And if we keep our conscious self asleep, we're unconscious, and then we're sort of like so stuck in this dualistic ego mode, and then all these things just seem so real.
Yeah.
And life is a battle, and your marriage is a battle where if she gets or he gets it right and you wrong, she won or he, and you lost. Even though it's not like that at all. And I guess it's not like that at all in your own mind, right? So when you're at war with yourself, which I guess we can say we all are, a lot of the time, like surprisingly often we're at war with ourselves, we're thinking that we can lose. Like we're thinking, oh, I'm thinking something bad, like say you're jealous of someone, or you're suspicious of or you're angry with someone, or you're like, it's just keep reaffirming itself, and because like, oh, I can't be that person, so I need to conquer that part of myself. I can't be a jealous person. I need to be an accepting person. I can totally relate to this, because this was such a big part of my psyche, and I guess still is, where I was so sort of caught up in the idea that I had to be a good person. So if someone got the job I wanted, then a part of me was like, God damn it, I wanted that job. That's so unfair. I got really upset with myself, because how could I tolerate being that type of person?
Yeah.
Which, as you probably can know yourself, that's like the opposite way of making something better, because the way forward is accepting parts of yourself, right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Obviously you'll be feeling these feelings, but suppressing them, will that solve anything, or will it just make it worse? Or put it back in, like make you even more unconscious? It's just going further into sleep. So I don't know. I guess that's just what the whole like war thing. Just this reminder of how far off we are, being true to ourselves, and how unconscious we are as a nation, or as a people, or as a world.
Yeah.
Because when I read the paper, you sort of get the feeling that some things are really bad, so we need to do something about them, and doing those things will be good. So in my example initially, where so there is someone did something horrible, they killed women and children.
Yeah.
So we need to do something horrible back, because that's so horrible that deserves.
You need to revenge it, or make sure that it doesn't happen again by doing the same thing to that person.
Yeah. It's very strange.
Yeah, it is very strange.
But I guess like in many parts of the world, capital punishment is still like a thing.
Yeah.
Whereas you killed someone, so well, it just makes total sense to kill you, because that would set things straight. Set what straight?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so
like there's a what do you call it in English? There's a mathematical thing that needs to add up. Like one kill equals okay.
We're keeping score.
Neutral, yeah, keeping score.
Keeping score, and that's back to like the relationship metaphor, where if you're keeping score in a relationship, that's gonna fuck up your relationship real good and real fast, because what are you keeping score about?
Exactly.
It's not a competition.
It doesn't work.
And I guess that sort of takes us into what I think possibly, or no, that works.
Mm-hmm.
It's like empathy, compassion, love.
Yeah.
When something horrible happens, it's not the rage and anger and bombs. That's going to add to the problem. Empathy, compassion, love will actually untangle them and take us to a better place. Whether you're fighting your girlfriend or arguing with some world leader on the other side of the globe.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is like when you talked about turning the other cheek concept.
Yeah.
That another way of looking at that, which adds, just adds to the way you described it. But it's when you turning the other cheek, what is happening is that you first make a decision of accepting the situation just as it is. Like, this is how it is right now. It doesn't matter. Like, I cannot change it. This is how it looks like right now. No matter what I do in the situation, it doesn't change it. So I need to just accept it. And actually, you can also say you need to just love it. Like love, like be love, in a sense. And then in that space, you can make a better decision because you create space to not, not be lost in anger or lost in all these negative feelings. So by accepting the situation as it is, not trying to change it, you kind of create a space where you kind of get a gap that is big enough for you to make a better choice than you otherwise would do if you were unconscious of the whole thing.
Yeah, your conscious self has a way better potential of seeing the situation at the higher level.
Yeah. So eventually, if you apply this kind of mindset, it gets easier and easier because you have less and less of that kind of reaction to things. So it's easier and easier, and it becomes more and more natural to just choose the higher path because that's natural. You come from a higher path, like you come from love, or these higher vibration feelings is more natural to who you really are. So the more you can create that gap, the easier it gets because you doesn't get that lost in the darkness, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or unconscious.
In your unconsciousness.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So, I just want to add something about that. The whole war thing is that, to me, it really makes sense that the only way to change the world is not to try to stop all these wars, like to fight a war to fight the fight of stopping war. It's like we can think that we are powerless in our own daily life, living as ordinary people, watching all this extreme stuff going on in the world. But one important thing, I think, is to stop watching the news, stop giving your attention to all these negative reactions. Like, because you kind of, if you watch the news every day and you look at everything that bad that happens in the world, you kind of reinforce your own idea that these things are happening and it needs to happen because it's happening right now, and it cannot be changed because it gets more hopeless and hopeless and hopeless and hopeless. And actually, if you watch the news, it looks like the world is going to collapse compared to 50 years ago. But still, we are living better lives than we did 50 years ago.
Yeah, the news are not a trustworthy source of information as to the state of the world.
They are actually kind of capitalizing on your fear, needing to make sure that you are staying in fear. Otherwise, they don't have anything to sell you.
Yeah.
So making a better choice about what you give your attention to, I think, is an important thing, because your life will get so much better. And you will have more space to be happy. So that's one thing. Another thing is to understand that what you do by being you, in your consciousness and the awareness that you have, you are part of, everyone is a part of the whole thing, and to be aware of that and take responsibility for your own kind of garden in everything you have in your mind, of the wars you're fighting in your mind, and if you take responsibility for cleaning your own garden instead of putting your attention on all these bad things happening out there, you actually have more influence on the collective consciousness as a whole, and as collective consciousness rises, and because everyone is kind of growing themselves, it actually gets harder for these kind of people that wants to stay in war to actually stay in war, because there's less room for our collective consciousness to allow it.
Yeah,
because we are all connected, you know.
Yeah.
So if everyone would choose, okay, I'm going to choose the higher path, I'm going to bring more love and compassion into this world, at some point eventually there will be no room for war, because it's so obvious for everyone that this doesn't work. But right now it's obvious for most people, I think, but there is still enough of these kind of really war-minded kind of elite, or whatever you call it, that can keep the collective stuck in this kind of game that works because we give our attention to it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I guess it's stopping the world wars, in a sense, will only work by stopping the war you have with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. If you can stop your own wars, it contributes to the collective of everyone, because you're not alone.
And I guess like that's where we maybe like the Syrian conflict, because so there is a conflict outside of ourselves, some totally different place in the world, and we still feel it's easier to solve our inner problems by trying to solve Syria.
Yeah.
Even though the solution is leaving that be, as hard as it may seem, because it's just part of the old narrative, right?
Yeah. And it is like
it doesn't mean that you need to share it on, like, but it means sort of working with yourself and working like with what's in front of you.
Yeah, exactly.
And the people in Syria will have their own path.
It's so easy to see to because we do this every day, right? We think that if we can solve what is outside of us, it will come back to the peaceful, the smooth place where nothing can hurt place. You. Yeah. So, and that's the same thing with like Syria or all the wars or everything. Like if we have an idea that if we can solve that, like we are thinking now, like in our mindset, not the ones that are actually doing the war, but the mindset of those people that we are kind of part of, that think we know better than those that do the wars. We can also fall into the trap of thinking that if we can just find a way to solve that, so that there is no war, then it will be a better place. So that's also fascinating, because it makes all these kind of peace organizations fall into the same trap, trying to keep the war out by forcing it to go away, in a sense, that by forcing all these charity organizations that are actually doing a really good intention, but you can question on a bigger scale. You can question: does it really contribute, or does it just keep ourselves in the mindset that there is something bad happening out there that we need to fix, or else? Yeah.
Things are gonna get like way worse. It's gonna spread. It's like a disease. I had this picture in my mind now of, like a planet like Earth when it's like new and fresh, and so there are these volcanic eruptions around, right? And then it sort of settles and it cools down and it finds sort of like a balance. And it seems like our humanity, or our consciousness is sort of like a planet, and we have these eruptions, right? these volcanic eruptions, and we sort of have at this point in our path this idea that if we can just put like huge like plugs in these volcanoes, that's gonna stop the eruptions. But they just keep up popping up everywhere because we're suppressing something, right?
Yeah.
That's what's making these volcanoes erupt, and I guess that in terms is maybe what makes this really hard, is that we sort of need to take ownership of the fact that the state of the world is a reflection of the state of how we treat ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like a tough one, because you sort of want to tell yourself that you're a good person and you can eat chocolate every once in a while and treat yourself and you're good to yourself. But when it comes down to it, you're hating on yourself quite a bit, and that war is just popping up all over the place, even though, as you said, we're actually getting better.
Yeah.
Because we're actually good things are really happening, because we are becoming more true to ourselves, and that's where the news is having the opposite effect. And I remember when I went to the university, I went to like media studies, and there is this theory where if you watch the news, you will always tend to think that the world is a way worse place, and this will be a downwards going spiral.
Yeah.
Because the more you watch the news, the more it will affirm your belief that the world is a horrible and dangerous place. And it will just like take you really down there, even though it's not true at all, because it's the news. And the news is not the truth. The news is a means of giving you the information that you want, not what you need.
That's true. Huh. I remember I learned in school that that was important that you learn yourself to, you teach yourself to, keep updated, because it's important to be functional in the world, that you are reading the news, the newspaper, watching the television. You need to keep up to date,
Yeah, you need to keep up with things. Yeah, you need to know what's
going
on.
And I remember at that point, I think this was when I was 15, 16, I actually took that in and tried to I need to be more like a grown-up, like reading a newspaper and, stay a little bit updated so I know what's going on out there.
Yeah, because that's what grown-ups do, right?
Yeah, but actually I have never been a person who have been really, into the news in any kind. I've never really, I tried a little bit then, but I've never really, so for me it was an easy decision that I don't stay in those kind of environments and spend my time there. But I still do sometimes, check the news, but it's very, and people around me are also frustrated when they speak to me because I don't know anything. Like, I don't know who won the sport thing, whatever. I have never heard about that kind of person. I don't know. There is all this Norwegian, politics stuff going on right now, or have done anyway. I don't even know what's the case about, because I haven't cared to read anything about it, and I don't really feel that I'm missing out on anything.
I think it's static, in a sense, right? There was something, I think, in terms of war. It has been said that the first thing that you lose in a war is truth, which is really interesting when you look at yourself, because what you're effectively doing, like the Syria conflict now. What's interesting with this, the example that I started with, is we don't know what's going on in Syria. Someone said that someone used chemical warfare. We don't know this. Someone said it was Assad. We don't know this. So we need to retaliate. And the Russians are saying this, and the Americans are saying that.
Yeah.
Because the truth is now, and it's just like a it's a subjective thing. It's you can just take it to Trump and say this is false news because war is it's just a matter of gaining the momentum to do what you want to do, for instance. And I think this is so relatable to your inner self because all these lies you keep on feeding yourself,
and
like your own media network in your brain, really has a very one-sided view of the thing typically.
Yeah.
And
but
dualistic news networks.
Yeah,
in your mind 24/7.
I think also that I've come to see that in my own life, truth is really not truth can never really be like a sentence that is like, this is the truth, this is how it is now, like this person did this and that's happening, so blah blah and blah, so and so and so on. It's like truth is more the kind of, the board that you, what do you call it, when you paint a painting, you have a canvas. Yeah, so kind of, if you look at a concrete situation, you can see that as a canvas on its own, and there's a lot of paintings on there, so you can look at the truth from different angles and tell the stories very differently, although it's the same truth in a sense. So if you're really looking to understand what truth is, you cannot look for facts, because truth is not a fact. Truth is a kind of the drawing board in a sense, where all these things form some mirage of stuff that points to something that is not possible to put into words or in a linear dualistic fact-based sentence where you can justify something. That's not truth. That's just a claim from one angle of a situation. So to be free, you need to be able to let go of truth being something that is black and white. You need to see what's behind the curtains, in a sense. That the truth is something that you cannot put into anything, but you can look at it from different angles, and it will look different, but it's the same. And there is no one to blame in truth. If you can have, that's actually a really good way to check if your truth is your truth. If there is someone to blame or something that is right or something that is wrong, it's not the truth. It's a story that justifies your version of the truth.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That is really good. And we all want the total and absolute truth, but we're sort of looking at it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Or in a very dualistic way.
You want to find a truth that justifies your view of the world.
Yeah.
So that you don't need to change or learn something new.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Don't want to do that. Let's go back to bombing. Seems way easier.
Maybe it works this time,
Yeah, it's gonna work this time for sure.
Yeah.
But something's changing, right?
Yeah.
You can sort of feel it. I would say that something is actually different. Not in the way the bombs are dropped, even though they're probably different because they're more hyper advanced, because we've made super technological advances over the last 50 years. But there's something about how the world reacts. Something's sort of different, right? It's like with a lot of things happening in the world, people are sort of reacting slightly different than they used to.
Yeah, I think so too.
And in a more awake state,
there's a shift happening, but it's going very, very slow. But it's a very positive shift. And I think an important thing in that whole mindset of, oh no, it looks like everything is going bad, is that in order to be really of a help to bring a positive, change to this world, is to let go of the mindset that what if it goes wrong, or that is going to go wrong. That you need to come to a place in yourself where you realize that this planet is made for our experience. It's not made to. If I think it's fair to say that if we could have destroyed it completely, we would have done so a long time ago. And maybe I'm not saying that's impossible to do that though, but what I'm saying is that I don't think our focus should be to whether we are destroying the world or not. Our focus should be to what is right for us to do in order to bring more of who we are into this world so that it can change to something better.
If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and
In the
make
mirror.
that change.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that seems to always be like the solution to our problems.
Yeah.
Because we keep turning outwards.
Mm.
It's just look in the mirror, baby.
Everything you see around you is a mirror of your own mind.
Yeah. And changing it on the outside, that's not the way forward, is it?
So even the way, when I look at you now, even the way I perceive you is based on my own mind of who I see you as you are. So there is no exception. Everything you see around you is your own mirror.
What's that the carnival or the fair is like the House of Mirrors?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's like the room with all the mirrors
thing.
in it.
Yeah.
That's
I've been in one once actually.
because in that space, if you're there alone at least,
Yeah.
it's just gonna be you.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
That's what's up.
So how many wars could we fight to make peace?
There is this one epic one that I know.
The epic one.
No, I'm sure it's infinite.
Is a new Avengers film
Yeah.
called Infinity Wars, or is that just? Because
I
that
don't know,
that would just seem so poetic at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check the. What does it say?